West Ham boss David Moyes, he actually joined the Diary of a CEO podcast, and he told Stephen Bartlett he wants to create a new West Ham. I listened to it and I questioned the timing of it because I thought this is strange, and a time to come out when they're just in the relegation zone and there's a lot of pressure on David Moyes. And when I listened to the podcast, they mentioned they were 16th, which was November time. And he also said something about going to interview Karen Brady next. This is Stephen Bartlett. And I listened to the Karen Brady one when I was in Qatar for the World Cup. Yeah. So this was recorded a little while ago. Why have they released it now? That was the question in my mind. What is? Are they worried that things are going to change at West Ham? Is now a good time to do it? Because actually, there's a lot of attention on the club. All these kind of things come into play. What did you think when you saw him on it?
The thing for me is that if I'm a West Ham fan, I'm not going to know that it was done in November. I'm going to think it's been done recently. Do you know what I mean, Laura and Ali? So for me, the timing of it being released is not great. Second bottom, and the things he's talking about, I understand. You know, he wants a different West Ham. He doesn't want a flaky West Ham. They're going to be at the stadium for 100 years. You know, he wants them to get used to it, the fans. But I just feel that the timing of it, second from bottom in the Premier League, fans want to hear him talking about, Ali, you'll chair right.
Sorry, I was trying to hold my breath.
So was I.
Gabby, I'm trying to move forward, right? And I know
stand up in the air.
The seat's creaking, and I thought, how am I going to do this not interrupting Gabby at the same time? And I basically couldn't do it. Sorry, mate.
No, it's okay. But the West Ham fans, they want to hear David Moyes come out and speak like, I'm up for the fight. You know, we need to get a result on them against Everton on the weekend. They don't want to be hearing podcasts come out about him talking about a new West Ham.
I was just reading through my notes, and look, I wrote loads. I actually wrote loads because it was a really good podcast for a few different reasons. Away from, when you step away from the situation that West Ham are in at the moment, listen, managers do interviews all the time, right? So this was a bit more of an insightful one. It was like they are a little bit like This Is Your Life with these kind of interviews. He talked about his time at Manchester United, and funnily enough, he mentioned talkSPORT in it. He said that during that time when he was worried about his job at Manchester United, he didn't want to turn on talkSPORT. He didn't want to listen to the radio. He didn't want to listen to people like us discussing whether or not he's in the sack race. He might feel a little bit like that at the moment as well. Football is a really brutal space. He also talked about the communication between the clubs. So Ed Woodward came in at the same time as he did, came in for David Gill, and they met each other before he took the job. Sir Alex basically invited him to his house and said, you're the next Manchester United manager. And that's how it happened. And then he wished for more communication. So when he was fired, I think he might have even found out about it in the media.
Yep.
Pretty sure I wrote that down. So he wished that it had been dealt with in a better way. It's funny with the way that football works, isn't it? Why do you think it is that some clubs operate in that kind of manner?
Because some clubs don't care. You know, they're ruthless, heartless. Some of these owners and chief executives, they don't care. If they're gonna sack you, they'll tell the press officer of the club to release to the media before they tell you. But some of them have got courtesy, they've got heart, and they will sit down with the manager and say, you know, it's not working. Been a bad run of results. We need to change because we're scared of a relegation battle. But David Moyes didn't deserve that. But we did a show on Saturday, Laura, and me and Jamie, the game day phoning, and the West Ham fans phoning in. They're not happy. They're saying there's no plan A, never mind the plan B. They're really disappointed and they want a change. I
just wanted to add one more point to this when we talk about managers losing their jobs, because it becomes so par for the course when you do a job like us. But there was a video that went on social media, Mark Hudson with his in front of his kids. The first part of the video was when he got the job and his kids were so excited and cuddling him. The second part of the video was when he lost his job and he had to tell the kids again. And it was really a little bit of insight into and a reminder that these guys are human. David Moyes spoke about it too, and he spoke about, especially when he was at Manchester United, the pressure, the abuse that the family end up shouldering because of the job that you're doing. Ali, you know all too well what it's like to be in football and to be a manager. How important are your family?
Oh, yeah, the most important by some considerable distance. You ask any man or woman in any job, no matter what the job is, the job will be important to them, and hopefully they'll enjoy their job, but it's not as important as your family. Never will be, never should be, never will be.
Let me rephrase that. How important are your family when you're in that kind of job?
Yeah, vitally important, because they can form a route of escapism from that particular pressure of that job. Albeit when you're good, I mean, when it's good, they can give you a reality check. When it's bad, you can find solace there in reality, if you like. So they're still the most important thing. They're the most important thing in your life, involving your job and involving your general life. Excuse me, of course there is. But, and the one thing that you mentioned there, there's nothing worse as a football manager, or indeed a football player, if it's not going well, because generally speaking, if it's not going well, you're a player or indeed a manager, you accept it goes with the territory, and you have to deal with it and have to handle it. What you don't accept, and what you find it I find it nearly impossible to accept, is when it starts affecting your family.
One other thing that I found really interesting, I'd honestly go and listen to this podcast, because it was really good if you're really into football and you really want to understand all the different ways that things work. To hear a manager talk very openly about any part of their job, I always think is gold dust, that kind of thing, to get more of an understanding of what happens behind the scenes. One of the questions that Stephen asked him basically led to the answer of what he wished he'd have known before he took the Manchester United job. And one thing he did say was, he said, all the managers who have like a real dynasty, anyone that follows them more often than not will fail. And he said he didn't really give that much thought. He wished he looked closer into it. He said maybe you need more experience even at that point. And he said sometimes you've got to say it's not always the boss's fault and things don't go right. But in this kind of case, he just wished he'd have thought more about that job before he took it.
Yeah, but it's... I need to listen to this because it sounds fascinating. But the flip side of the coin will be, the right thing to do is not take the job, right? Because you've not got a good vibe about it. It's bordering on, not bordering, it probably has been
a big job though, isn't it? How do you turn it down?
That's my point. It's an impossible act to follow. Sir Alex, it's as I've been quoted earlier, it's like getting handed the microphone from Frank Sinatra to give us the next song. It's bordering on impossible, right? It's bordering on impossible. So therefore, how do you knock it back? How do you knock back the opportunity to manage, in a lot of people's eyes, the greatest football club in the world?
You can't, can you? You can't. You have to do it. You have to back yourself and then see what happens. We said the same thing in a different way. Graham Potter's not taking over off an Alex Ferguson, but he's taken over off a Thomas Tuchel, who's brought the Champions League to Chelsea. Going from a club like Brighton, where they absolutely adore him, you can't turn down a job like Chelsea.
You can't. And
look how difficult it is.
I feel for David Moyes as well. How tight it is at the bottom between 7-8 teams is helping managers like Frank Lampard and David Moyes. They're not cut adrift, are they, Ali?
No.
So hopefully they get the win on the weekend and he keeps his job.
talkSPORT Breakfast with Laura Woods, Monday to Wednesday mornings 6 till 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.